Welcome back to Shadowy Delights, your source for spine-chilling horror stories. Before we dive into today's terrifying tale, remember to like, share, and subscribe. Turn on notifications so you never miss a scare. Now, sit back, relax, and prepare to be captivated by another shadowy delight. I wanted to share a really creepy experience I had while babysitting last year. So, it was a pretty normal gig, or at least I thought it would be. The parents were going out for a late dinner and a movie, and they asked me to watch their 6-month-old baby, Lily. I've babysat for them before, so I felt pretty comfortable. The evening started off fine. I put Lily to bed around 8 p.m., and then I settled down in the living room to watch some TV. They had one of those video baby monitors, so I could see and hear Lily from the screen on the coffee table. She was fast asleep, which was a relief because sometimes she's a bit fussy. Around 10 p.m., I started hearing strange noises coming from the baby monitor. At first, I thought it was just static or interference, but then I realized it sounded more like a faint whisper. I turned up the volume, trying to make out what it was, but it just sounded like garbled whispers. It was definitely not normal baby sounds. I was getting pretty freaked out, so I decided to check on Lily. I went upstairs to her room, but everything was perfectly normal. She was still fast asleep, and the room was quiet. I figured it must have been some weird electronic glitch and went back downstairs. But then, the whispers started again. This time, they were louder and clearer. I could hear someone saying, "Is she alone? Is she alone?" I was absolutely terrified. I grabbed my phone to call the parents, but right at that moment, the doorbell rang. I nearly jumped out of my skin. I went to the door and looked through the peephole. It was the parents, home early because their movie got canceled. I let them in and told them everything that happened. They checked the baby monitor, but of course, it was just showing Lily sleeping peacefully. They were pretty concerned and called the police to report it. Turns out, there had been a few incidents in the neighborhood with people hacking into baby monitors. The police assured us they would keep an eye on the area. Needless to say, I never babysat there again. To this day, I still get chills thinking about those whispers. I want to tell you about the scariest thing that's ever happened to me while babysitting. This was a couple of years ago, and I was babysitting for a family that lived in an old house at the edge of town. It was kind of creepy looking, but the kids were great, and I needed the money. The night started out fine. I was watching two kids, Jamie and Tommy. They were 8 and 6, and we played some games before I put them to bed around 9 p.m. After they were asleep, I was just hanging out in the living room, reading a book. Around 11 p.m., I heard a noise coming from upstairs. It sounded like one of the kids was out of bed. I went up to check, but when I got to their room, they were both fast asleep. As I was turning to leave, I heard a door creak open. I looked down the hall and saw the door to the guest room slowly swinging open. Now, I knew that door had been closed when I came upstairs, so I was a little freaked out. I walked over to the guest room and peeked inside. The room was empty, but I noticed that the window was open. I figured maybe the wind had blown the door open, so I closed the window and went back downstairs. About half an hour later, I heard the noise again. This time, it sounded like footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming from the guest room. I grabbed a flashlight and headed back upstairs, my heart pounding. I pushed the door open and shone the light around the room. It was empty, just like before. But then, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The closet door was slightly ajar. I could have sworn it had been closed earlier. I stood there, staring at the closet, too scared to move. Finally, I gathered enough courage to walk over and pull the door open. Inside the closet, I found a man crouching, hiding. I screamed and ran out of the room, locking the door behind me. I called 911 and then the parents, who rushed home immediately. The police arrived and arrested the intruder. Apparently, he had been breaking into homes in the area and hiding until the residents were asleep. I never went back to that house again. Even now, just thinking about it gives me the creeps. It happened last summer when I was babysitting for a family in our neighborhood. They had 2 kids, Emily and Jack, 5 and 3 years old. The parents were going to a wedding and wouldn't be back until late, so I had the whole evening with the kids. The night was pretty normal. I played with the kids, fed them dinner, and put them to bed around 8:30 p.m. After they were asleep, I was relaxing in the living room, scrolling through my phone. That's when the house phone rang. It startled me because, honestly, who uses house phones anymore? I answered, and there was just silence on the other end. I said hello a couple of times, but no one responded, so I hung up. I figured it was a wrong number or some sort of prank and tried to brush it off. About 10 minutes later, the phone rang again. This time, when I answered, there was a man's voice. He said, "How are the kids?" I froze. My heart started pounding. I asked who it was, but he just chuckled and hung up. I was starting to get really scared. I tried to stay calm. I checked on the kids, making sure they were still asleep, and then I locked all the doors and windows. I went back to the living room and tried to distract myself with some TV, but I couldn't focus. The phone rang again. I didn't want to answer, but I felt like I had to. When I picked up, the same voice said, "I'm watching you." I could feel my hands shaking. I told him to leave me alone and that I was calling the police, but he just laughed and hung up again. I was in full panic mode now. I called the parents and told them what was happening. They said they were on their way home and to keep the doors locked. As soon as I hung up with them, the phone rang again. I didn't want to answer, but I was too scared to ignore it. When I picked up, the voice said, "You shouldn't have called anyone." I hung up immediately and called 911. The dispatcher stayed on the line with me until the police arrived. The officers checked the house and the surrounding area but didn't find anyone. They stayed until the parents got home. It turns out there had been a series of prank calls in the neighborhood recently, but this one felt too targeted and specific. The parents installed better security and changed their phone number after that.
Your support means everything to us. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, share, and subscribe. Click the video on the screen for more shadowy delights.